Bani Walid in Libya, the ex-stronghold of late Colonel Gaddafi, is in flames again. It's a year after the dictator's death and the NATO-led military operation there. Libya's army is trying to clear out supporters of the old regime and has laid siege to the town for the last 2 weeks. Let's talk to Annie Machon, a former MI5 agent, joining us here on RT. Good to see you today. First of all, one man inside Bani Walid spoke to RT. He described various type of gas in the air after one artillery attack. I mean, what are you making of reports now that possibly chemical weapons may actually have been used there?
Well, given that Colonel Gaddafi's regime was reported to have stockpiled chemical and biological weapons while he was in power, and given perhaps all of those might track down, and in fact there was a report on CNN last year saying that there's an old stash of chemical weapons found in Bani Walid, indeed. So there is a possibility there's a lot of old chemical weapons still floating around Libya that might fall into rebel, militia, or even government army hands. However, we shouldn't discount the possibility, I don't think, that this could be stuff that has been given to the official Libyan army and is being used against distant populations, much as we saw the American army reportedly using things like white phosphorus against civilians in Iraq and Fallujah in the Iraq War a decade ago.
So it's ultimately unclear if indeed chemical weapons have been used in Bani Walid. It's unclear if they are old chemical weapons or if indeed they've actually been funneled in during the well over a year of conflict now. Annie, if I may for a moment, it's a year now, since NATO powers helped to topple the previous regime. Why is Libya still in such a state of disarray?
I think people need to remember that no matter how brutal and odious a dictator Colonel Gaddafi could be towards dissidents, he did provide a certain degree of stability and general quality of life to the vast majority of people in Libya once he seized power. He was very much into the idea of spreading the oil wealth around so that people had a decent quality of life. And yes, he could be brutal, but that very strength allowed him to pull together the disparate tribes and competing religion and secular groups within Libya. And by taking away that control, NATO has sort of abruptly removed any centralised power in Libya, and the people are suffering for it now, of all flavour, all persuasions.
When we talk about this power struggle and ultimately the struggle to bring peace to Libya, what are the issues with, for example, the consequences of the fact that the country's new leaders have depended heavily on former rebel militias to secure cities in the absence of a strong national army?
That was always going to end in a mess. And you have competing sects, you have competing groups, and as soon as you have a country which is full of such groups, and many of them angry young men with arms and weapons, you're going to have a problem. And let's not forget that, in fact, the key groups that the West were backing, trying to overthrow Gaddafi last year, were the sort of more Islamic extremist groups, potentially with links to Al-Qaeda from Benghazi, and old royalist groups who also had a grudge against Gaddafi. And particularly the more sort of religious side of things, groups are going to cause problems. They're going to want to impose their own type of rule on the country. And Libya has been used to a certain degree of comfort and wealth for the last 40 years, and a lot of people are not going to want to bow down to, for example, Sharia law or whatever. So, of course, it's going to be a mess.
Well, now let's address one issue here. The United States has diverted $7 million away from Pakistan to help train a crack squad of 500 commandos for Libya. What exactly does that mean? Are they hoping to have a footprint to remain for some time to come in Libya, or are they trying to bring peace? Or what are the motives here?
I think trying to bring peace is always a wonderful political euphemism. I think what they're going to do is probably train up local crack squads to crack down on the population in order to try and stabilise the country, not necessarily for the good of the Libyan people, but for the juicy oil contracts that a lot of NATO countries want to acquire in Libya. I mean, let's not forget that the whole NATO invasion was spearheaded by France, and the reporting at the time was that France needed to destabilise the Gaddafi regime in order to acquire and secure contracts for its oil company Total, because at that point Gaddafi, who of course let's not forget had come in from the international cold, was on the point of signing a very good deal with an Italian oil company, So the French went in very fast, very hard, and thought they were sort of securing their economic needs from France.
All right, Annie Machon, a former MI5 agent, live on RT. Thanks very much indeed for coming on the programme today.